This is Digital Breakthroughs, putting the spotlight on cutting-edge digital marketing strategies for your business. With your host, CEO of industry-recognized digital marketing and social media agency, National Positions, Bernard May.
Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Mike Roberts. He's the founder and CEO of SpyFu. Mike's company, as the name implies, helps to spy on online competitors. Mike's done an amazing job building an incredible company over the last couple of years, and he's helped thousands of companies to thrive and grow online. Mike, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, Mike, tell us a little bit about how you got into the digital marketing space and maybe a little bit about SpyFu and how it helps small businesses out there.
So I started out actually with another software company, and this was back in like 2005, and so Google AdWords and hadn't been around super long, and I was trying to learn how to advertise, but the reality was I only had like $3,000 in my bank account to spend on advertising, and so otherwise I would literally have to go back to work. So I had to be right in the bets that I made. And one thing I wanted to do is like, I figured something out, right? Just sort of, I happened to figure out that instead of searching for what I thought people were searching for, which was, my product did this thing that took data off of a website and put it into a spreadsheet or database, kind of like scraping things out of eBay and putting it into like Excel. And so I called that, because I was a nerd, I called that web data extraction. Well, it turns out that most people didn't search for web data extraction. They searched for like screen scraping the web or web scraping. And I had no idea. And I actually kind of thought that was a stupid way to refer to it. And so it was by happenstance that I figured that out. And so I wanted to figure out whether or not any of my competitors had thought of any of those sort of consumer searches that I hadn't thought of. So that's why I built the prototype for SpyFu. It was basically just to help myself, find more keywords that people were searching on, and it did absolutely work. It worked really well, and it was I was able to hire additional people. I went from basically, about I'd say about $1,000 a month in sales to like $12,000 a month in sales. And so it was a pretty big deal. And of course, I released that thing as a free tool online.
Awesome. And so I understand that you can do keyword analysis with SpyFu and these competitive intelligence tools, but what can they really do for people? If I'm a small business owner, most of our listeners are small business owners, and they're just trying to get an edge. How does competitive intelligence, what is competitive intelligence, and what can it do for someone who's running a business online?
It's funny, because the first thing that you learn and that you should pay attention to is, how you are communicating what you're doing. This is the very first sort of premise of SEO. And in fact, if I go back to that story, the name of my product back in that day was called Providus, right? Which seemed like a great name to me. I was stoked to get the domain name. It was a short domain name, and it sounded good. But when I changed the name of the product from Providus to Web Scraper Plus, like literally that was like the day, like that my sales tripled overnight, and I was able to like hire my first employee. And sort of that like very basic stuff. Like I was just talking to my 7-year-old son, who's like an aspiring YouTuber. I'm like, he's got this balloon popping video that he's got improperly named. And so I was like, check it out. Here's how you use SpyFu. You just go on here and you find the highest volume, the keyword that does what your video does, and find the one that's got the highest volume and lowest competition. He's 7, And so we renamed his YouTube video, I think like water balloon popping slow motion, or slow motion water balloon popping, which is actually something that people search on a lot.
That's pretty amazing. So
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, no. So I'm interested to understand. So you can obviously find keywords. It sounds like you can, get intelligence on what, doesn't Google have a lot of those features? Like, why would you need an application like this if you can kind of go into AdWords and you can kind of get keyword volumes. Also, you can get keyword volumes on YouTube. So, I'm just wondering, why an application like this is necessary, and what else you could do.
That's fair enough. Well, okay, so Google is a great company. Google's a great company, actually, but they're they're in the business of business, and they're in the business to make money, and so when you look at Google and they have this tool called Keyword Planner, and Keyword Planner is like the product that Google produces, the one that lets you search the internet and stuff, is amazing. It's so great. And so Google has this ability to create really, really amazing products. But the product that is Keyword Planner, that's designed to give you information about keywords, is like the worst possible thing in the entire world, because it can be very misleading. It can be flatly wrong, like very often it is, and in a weirdly self-serving way. As an example, if you were to look at I don't know, just like the basic word like car insurance or something, Google's going to show you, by default, they're going to tell you that keyword gets a lot more searches than it really does. Because what they are doing is they're taking all of the misspellings and plurals and different tenses of that same word and rolling it all up into one, such that if you type in a misspelling of YouTube, which is one of the most searched keywords in the world, YouTube is just a navigational search, but if the proper spelling of YouTube, gets I don't know, hundreds of millions of searches. But if you type in YouTube, YOUITUBE, that search, they tell you that search itself gets that same number of searches. So there's this weird lack of granularity that they have, because they roll a whole bunch of, could be thousands of keywords, all into one keyword. So they don't tell you the truth on those things. And then the other weird thing is that Google, the Keyword Planner tool, will only give you search volume, the number of searches, in weird increments. It's 10, 20, 50, 100. It turns out that to span all of the values between 0 and 200 million searches, they only have, I believe it's 93 discrete values. So at some point you're making jumps in sort of in precision of 50 million searches a month, So it's actually a pretty terrible tool, and it's really unfortunate, because you'd think that they would just at some point be embarrassed enough to make it okay, but I think that there's some kind of incentive that they have to make it terrible. I really don't know why it's such a horrible tool, but it really is bad.
Well, they obviously want you to look at keywords and think that there are hundreds of thousands of searches and that you should bid on that. But I'm wondering how, this is something I didn't divulge just in the beginning, but I've been using your tool for many, many years, love it. And but I wonder, how do you come up with those numbers if Google's numbers are so out of whack, and people are obviously searching on their search engine, so they should know the right numbers or close to the correct numbers. How can SpyFu figure this out if Google can't figure it out?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of ways, and a lot of basically it's you get a sample of users and you see what they search for, and then you extrapolate it. It's very similar to how Google would do it if they were doing a good job, but I mean, I guess the other thing that you have with SpyFu, of course, I mean, we sort of have this curse of knowledge, you and I, having used the tool and I, made it, right? That is that, of course, with Keyword Planner, you can't type in your competitor's website and see the keywords that they buy and rank on. And that's obviously the core meat and potatoes of SpyFu's original value proposition, is that you can download your competitors' keywords and see their ads and that type of thing. But there's also quite a few different, like, new metrics like that you can't get from Google, or that are pretty difficult to find unless you're looking at your own analytics. And that's like the split of mobile versus desktop. There's a lot of keywords that are highly desktop. And I mean, we hear a lot about how everything's moving mobile, and it's true. There's a lot of searches that are very mobile. And so you want to make sure that you have a mobile first experience, but there's also a lot of searches that are very desktop centric. So broadly, to paint with a broad brush, people tend to make purchases on their desktops more often than they make purchases on mobile. And so the keywords that are desktop heavy tend to be more transactional and stuff. So these are the types of metrics that we have in our along with our stuff. How much mobile is there? How many clicks or what percent of clicks go to ads versus organic? Which percent of keywords or which percent of searches don't get clicked at all? Right? There's a lot of things that are just sort of answered in the snippet, and so you have kind of this opportunity to do on SERP optimization instead of on-page optimization.
So this is amazing stuff. And I just wanted to maybe bring this back to a very practical example. Like, say, for instance, I am a plumber in Los Angeles, or maybe even, bring this down to a suburb. I'm in Westlake Village in Los Angeles, and I'm trying to beat out, I go in and I search, and I see in paid search and in organic, I can see who is showing up at the top of the search engines, and I just want to beat them out. I mean, how do I practically, what kind of things besides keywords, or was that really the place to start? What is the process that I go through within a competitor intelligence tool like yours?
Okay, so there's a very simple, straightforward process. There's a few places to start. It kind of depends whether you've been around for a while, or whether you're trying to start from scratch. But kind of one of these things that works for everybody, right? Because your mileage may vary on a lot of tips that I can give, but one thing that basically always works is a process of improving your existing content. And we have this section on SpyFu called Top Pages. What Top Pages does is it shows you your competitor. It shows you any website's most trafficked pages. And so when you're looking at which content of your competitors is doing a good job of actually getting SEO traffic, you can use Top Pages to do that. So you just type in their site, and we're going to immediately show you their top most trafficked content. But you can apply that same idea to your own site. And what you do is you go to this thing called Top Pages. You put in your own site. We're going to show you your own top content. And what I want you to do is look at that content, and we show you the title, and we also show you the top keywords in that piece of content ranks on. Right. So I want you to make sure that the top keyword that's driving the most traffic to your site is actually in the title. It's a really fast audit. You make sure it's in your title, and then you make sure that it's in your H1. Then the next thing that I want you to do is take that same keyword. So let's say that keyword was plumbing repair Tacoma, right? And so you want to take that plumbing repair Tacoma and type that in to the filter on this Top Pages tool, and see if there's any other pieces of content that also rank on that same keyword or variations of that keyword. And then I want you to either get rid of that content, redirect that content, combine that content into the other piece of content, or do a cross-link. It's a decision that you make based on what you're looking at in the content, but when you've got various different pieces of content all pointing to the same, all ranking on the same topic, you want to combine all that stuff. Generally speaking, you want to combine it all into one mega sort of authoritative piece of content. So that's a process that can work for everybody that has anything that's existing.
That sounds great. And so basically, putting it another way, then you're taking the tool, you're using it to reverse engineer the content of your competitors, and you're writing lots of content into kind of a content pillar or a content theme, you maybe want to call it, on various subjects. So for this plumber, they may have, they may see, oh, okay, they're talking about slab leaks, or they're talking about leaky faucets, and so I'm going to write all these articles, or have my team write all these articles, and have them all kind of linked together, and then obviously that will help you on the SEO perspective. If you do something like that, you should get similar results to the this competing site. But I mean, we know as SEOs that's not the only ingredient. Like obviously, content's really important, and putting together content themes is something that's really, really important. And obviously can't emphasize that more to people out there. And of course, Google's talking all about user intent and answering all the questions. Does your tool tell people what kinds of content to write at different levels in the buyer journey or in the funnel?
Yeah, so that's like kind of the next step, right? And I'm kind of focused on this improving your own content. So you're talking about, just a second ago, you're talking about building a whole bunch of content. And when you're building a whole bunch of content, you have a basic idea. You have a goal in mind, right? I want this piece of content to rank for, what did you say, a foundation leak or something like that? Slab leak?
Slab leaks.
Okay, so I want this content to rank for slab leak. You post the content, and you know how it is, right? Like there's almost like a rule. It's like a power curve rule. You publish 100 pieces of content, you're not going to have like a bell curve of content. It's not like like let's say you're not going to have like an average of 100 clicks, and these things don't vary very much. Like it's going to be something like you're going to have 3 pieces of content or 5 pieces of content that get 5,000 clicks per month, and you're going to have 50 pieces of content that get 6 clicks per month, right? So I want you to focus on those unicorn pieces of content that actually stuck, and I want you to improve those, right? That's the way to do it, because you can fight what Google is saying, but if they like a piece of content, you want to make them like it more, right? Just double down on those pieces of content. And so the next step is you go through those big, those winning pieces of content, and find any questions that you didn't ask. Add videos to these pieces of content. Just pile everything that you have into those big winners. And unfortunately, it is a numbers game. You kind of have to just produce a bunch of pieces of content and then see what happens. But my recommendation is to sort of ride the wave of what Google is giving you on those, as opposed to sticking with your original plan and trying to rank it on whatever you want to rank it on. You want to rank it on what Google is, unless it's completely different and completely out of line with what you're trying to rank for.
So with machine learning, and maybe I'm just saying this in a different way, but Google's machine learning is basically saying who the winner is. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is kind of reverse engineering, using your tool to identify which keywords are most important, and then basically creating something that's even better than what is number one right now. So
that's right.
Like in the past, I think we used to look at content as text, but now that's all changed, and it's much more video and images, or it just depends really on the industry. But people are consuming content in a different way. Does the tool tell you that this content has videos and images, or how many images and things like that, or it's just really focused on the text side of things?
Well, SpyFu doesn't look at the content and tell you whether or not what's in the other content or within the winning content. yet. It's something that I've been certainly looking at, trying to reverse engineer everything that Google does. But that's like, what we do is we sort of prioritize the list and say, you know, here's the stuff that you want to try to improve right now. And in our tests, that sort of making sure that the title tag and the H1 tag has your most important keyword in it, that tends to get you about 1 to 1.5. It's actually about 1.4 positions that'll increase. We've done that on about, I don't know, 25 pieces of content, and we've actually sort of documented our own results. And 1.4 positions doesn't seem like a lot, right? But every position that you move up, it gets you about 30% more clicks on that keyword. So when you're looking at a keyword where you're getting, you know, 500 clicks, you're going to get like 200 more.
And that is that's certainly the lowest hanging fruit as well. It's so easy to do that. Yeah.
Oh, it takes 2 minutes. Yeah, and you just can constantly do it. You just, as you're producing content, you see what's happened, and you make sure that you have those really basic optimizations. But then the other stuff where you see other pieces of content, kind of where you're looking at cross-linking or canonicalization opportunities. You know, like if you've got one of these unicorn pieces of content getting in any way cannibalized by like some crappy, you know, piece of content way down your curve, even if it's a great piece of content and you love it, you got to combine it, you know, pull everything in or de-optimize that other one.
So I know these are great tips on SEO. I wanted to just jump over to PPC now.
Yeah.
So, you know, Google ads, Bing ads, things like that. So tell the audience a little bit about what kind of intelligence you can get on the paid side.
So at the top level, we've been collecting data for 14 years. So what we have is for every website in existence, about 99.7% of companies, we have their entire AdWords campaign from beginning to end, and so you can see every ad that they've ever written, and every ad that they ran as a test against it, and every win and loss. So if you think of, you know, a company that's been around for a really long time in internet years, like Groupon, we've been collecting data for 6 years before they were a company. So you can see the very first ad that they written, you know, by their CEO in the early days, and then you can see the A, the B, the C, all the way through, like, it's way past Z. It's something like, I don't even know how we code them. I think it's like B, E or something, you know, like you sort of roll around the alphabet. There's like 52 variants or something that we see. And that's real important because seeing all that history is useful because people tend to make mistakes, the costly mistakes early in their ad campaigns, right? There's keywords that they buy that they spend a lot of money on and then they pull. And those are the types of things that you can avoid by looking at, like, ideally, you want to look at, you know, big competitors, big national competitors. Those are really useful to look at, even if you're a small local business. You want to look at people that are inspirational, that are doing a great job, and that have an engine and a team and a whole process, and you can leverage, you know, their $1 million a day in spend to your niche.
So that's an amazing asset to have. Is like basically they've made all the mistakes, they've spent the money. Don't make the same mistakes. Look at the history. So that's huge. That's huge. And you know, I'd love to speak to you more about all of these topics, but I know we don't have a huge amount of time, and I did want to like jump into where you see things going in the market today, like any trends that you at SpyFu are like really focusing on that you think could be, you know, helpful to our average listener.
So trends-wise from the industry, you know, some things that you need to sort of think about are, obviously you've got these sort of zero-click searches where basically people do, the answers, the question is answered on the SERP, right? So there's strategies to deal with that. And by the way, zero searches are actually coming, where if you type in something like, I don't know, like weather, it'll answer it right in the suggest box. So certain things are going to go away, and these are kind of like the broad things that everybody wants to think about. From a tools perspective, from like what we focus on, it's SpyFu is this massive repository that's unlimited data, right? You can use SpyFu all you like and do all the research that you can possibly do, and it's an all-you-can-eat tool for $39 a month. And we focused on having the richest data that we can possibly have for a long time. And one thing that I'm focused on right now is making sure that things that we give you, that we actually give you straight up recommendations, actions that you can take today, and actually prioritize those actions by like how easy they are for you to do and how effective they're going to be. And that's kind of, that's where I see us focusing our time in, like, let's say the next, over the course of the next like 3 years. We're making the product have an opinion and give you actionable recommendations right now.
That'll be super helpful. So basically, like a plan of action for each insight that you get for each item that you kind of uncover for those for the other sites that people are looking at or the competitors. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to ask you, like, what kinds of blogs, videos, resources do you go to typically, to get your information about the industry and about digital marketing?
Oh, I follow kind of like the standard. I get a lot of stuff from Twitter, I suppose. I've got a relatively curated group of people that share things that I find insightful. I'm kind of I'm personally kind of into AI and machine learning. There's a few podcasts. There's a podcast that's quite good if you guys are into that type of stuff. But obviously, my goal is to essentially like reverse engineer Google and apply like machine learning to figure out how to give you the right answers and the insights based on truly petabytes of data. So I don't spend quite as much time like learning about marketing trends as I spend about how to make answers out of huge amounts of data. Mike
Roberts, it's been an unbelievable pleasure having you join us today. You've got such a lot of insight. You're one of the pioneers in digital marketing, done an incredible job with your company. If any of our listeners wanted to get hold of you or follow you or learn more about SpyFu, where should they go? I'm
Mike at spyfu.com. I'm at Mr. Spy, Mr. Spy on Twitter. I'm Sporktopus on Reddit. Oh, and you can look me up by just typing in SpyFu and finding the CEO on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure speaking to you, and we appreciate all the insights and great information that you've given all our listeners.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Digital Breakthroughs, featuring experts in all the areas of cutting-edge digital marketing. Digital Breakthroughs is hosted by Bernard May, CEO of leading social media and digital marketing agency, National Positions, located online at nationalpositions.com.